Three popular jocks corner Harper, a quiet new scholarship student, in the school cafeteria. One dumps a tray of food on her head. Another shoves her to the floor, expecting an easy humiliation. But Harper doesn't flinch, her eyes cold, her lips curved in a menacing smile. She whispers, 3, 2, 1. In under a minute, she moves with lightning speed, taking all three down with brutal, precise martial arts, her expression fierce and unyielding. The bullies' smirks vanish into shock and fear. But this isn't just about them. Harper connects a laptop to the cafeteria screen, revealing a massive database of corruption. FBI agents swarm in, arresting complicit administrators as her calm, commanding gaze sweeps the room. The quiet girl they tried to destroy becomes the unstoppable force exposing a nationwide network, dismantling the corrupt system in one aggressive, flawless strike. Harper stood tall in the school cafeteria, her chest heaving with a mix of adrenaline and fear. The three jocks, Jake, Max, and Nick, had been rivals since they were kids, but their rivalry didn't extend beyond competition on the field. Now, as Harper approached them, she knew that this was different. The room was bustling with students chatting away, laughing, and discussing various topics. But Harper's attention wasn't caught by anyone except Jake, the tall, muscular jock with a smooth, unlined face. His eyes met hers for a moment before turning to Max, his chiseled jawline etched in a permanent grin. "Harper," he said, interrupting her train of thought. "What's going on?" The other two jocks looked at Harper curiously as she approached them, their faces unreadable from the glare of her computer screen. They knew about her background, her scholarship, her prowess in martial arts, and her determination to expose a corrupt system. But they never expected this. "Hey," she said smoothly, crossing her arms over her chest. "I'm Harper, quiet new scholarship student." Jake raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a frown. Max gave him a small nod as if he understood the gravity of what was about to unfold before them. "I've been following some pretty interesting stuff on your laptop," Jake said, taking out his phone and scrolling through the database Harper had discovered. The corruption is massive, from high school to college levels. Harper's heart skipped a beat at this revelation. She knew that she was onto something big, but what exactly were they referring to? The system of administrators who controlled every aspect of their lives, including education, politics, and even sports? "Sounds serious," Nick said, his eyes narrowing. Harper nodded, her expression unreadable as she analyzed the data on her laptop. "I'm not sure how far it goes back, but I've uncovered evidence that involves high-ranking officials from multiple universities." The jocks exchanged a look before Jake spoke up again. "You mean those administrators who are behind this corrupt system?" Max asked, his voice raised in concern. Harper nodded yes. She knew the kind of power these individuals wielded. They controlled access to funding, resources, and information, allowing them to manipulate events and influence decision-making at any level. But what was she going to do about it? "I have a plan," Harper said, her eyes narrowing even further as she reviewed the data on her laptop. "I'm going to expose this system and dismantle it from within." The three jocks looked skeptical, but not surprised. They knew that Harper had always been ambitious, driven by a desire for justice and fairness in their world. And now, with these powerful figures at stake, they realized that she was onto something truly significant. But the real battle wasn't just against the corrupt administrators, but also within themselves. The jocks were used to believing that their power over others came from strength alone, not intelligence or cunning. But Harper had proven them wrong, and now it was time for a change. As they stood in silence, watching Harper's laptop screen flicker with images of corruption and officials making deals behind closed doors, The jocks knew that this was only just the beginning of their journey to uncover the truth and bring down this corrupt system. The battle between justice and power would be long and difficult, but with Harper by their side, they had everything they needed to succeed. Harper, a quiet and ambitious young scholar in the heart of New York City, was sitting at her desk in the school cafeteria, reviewing data on an obscure project she had been working on. As she flipped through various spreadsheets and graphs, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something sinister was lurking beneath the surface. She knew from personal experience that corruption was not just a problem within government or law enforcement agencies. It often extended to other areas of society as well. Her three friends, Alex, Jake, and Max, had been monitoring Harper's activities closely since they discovered her dedication towards uncovering the truth about a corrupt school system in their neighborhood. They'd witnessed firsthand how officials manipulated public funds for personal gain and used intimidation tactics to silence anyone who dared to expose wrongdoing. As the trio delved deeper into this dark world, they began to realize that Harper's work was no longer just limited to academic pursuits. With each new discovery, Harper had proven her own intelligence and cunning in unraveling a complex conspiracy involving multiple layers of power and deceit. She knew she wasn't alone. There were others like her out there fighting for justice, risking their lives to expose the truth and bring down those responsible. As they sat in the cafeteria, discussing their next course of action, Harper couldn't help but feel torn between her desire to continue pursuing this investigation without interference and a growing sense of urgency that seemed almost impossible to ignore. The corrupt officials were becoming more cunning with each passing day, using tactics such as cyberbullying, smear campaigns, and even physical threats to silence anyone who dared to challenge their authority. Despite the risks involved, Harper knew that she had no choice but to continue her quest for truth. She couldn't let this injustice go unchecked any longer, not when lives were at stake and innocent people's futures were being threatened by a corrupt system more powerful than they could ever imagine. "All right, guys," Alex spoke up, breaking the silence with his voice. "We need to come together and take matters into our own hands. Harper has been doing some incredible work here, but we can't sit idly by while these officials continue their criminal activities. We've got a big problem on our hands that requires action." Max nodded in agreement, his eyes fixed on Harper's determined expression. And with Harper's intelligence and resourcefulness at the forefront of this investigation, she knows exactly what to do next. She'll lead us into even more dangerous territories, exposing those who dare to stand up against them. Jake spoke softly, a hint of worry creeping across his face. "But we're not just fighting for justice here. We also need to protect ourselves and our loved ones from the consequences of this corruption. The officials might be able to silence us now, but they can't stop what Harper's investigation will reveal in the long run." Harper gave a small smile, her eyes shining with determination. "We're not afraid. We'll face whatever challenges come our way, and we won't let anyone stand in our way. Together, we'll expose this corrupt system to the light and hold those responsible accountable for their actions." The four friends stood up from their seats, clapping each other on the back as they shared a moment of camaraderie before turning towards Harper. "Let's do it," she said with a firm voice. "We've been fighting for truth and justice for far too long now. It's time to take things one step at a time and put an end to this corrupt system once and for all." From that day forward, the jocks dedicated themselves entirely to Harper's cause. They knew they couldn't stop until every detail of their investigation was uncovered, from the inner workings of the school administration to the personal lives of those affected by corruption. As they delved deeper into this complex conspiracy, they discovered a web of lies, deceit, and manipulation that went beyond what anyone could have imagined. From corrupt politicians to powerful business leaders, everyone had fallen prey to the system's ruthless tactics. But Harper was determined to expose them all and bring justice to those who were wrongfully impacted. Their journey took them through some of the most dangerous neighborhoods in New York City, where they faced off against intimidating security measures and even witnessed firsthand how officials used violence and intimidation to silence anyone who dared to challenge their authority. But with each new obstacle, Harper's determination only grew stronger as she refused to back down from her quest for truth. As they continued to gather evidence and expose the corrupt system, Harper became more than just a student. She had become an activist, a whistleblower, and a symbol of hope in a world that often seemed dark and hopeless. But despite the challenges they faced along the way, Harper's unwavering commitment to justice gave them the strength to push through even the toughest obstacles. In the end, their efforts paid off as the corrupt officials were brought down one by one, thanks to the tireless investigation of Harper and her fellow jocks. The school system was cleaned up, and the lives of those affected by corruption were finally put right. But for Harper, the journey had only just begun. She knew that there would be many more battles ahead, but with a deep sense of purpose driving her forward, she was ready to face any challenge that came her way. As they gathered around Harper in celebration of their victory, she looked out at them all and smiled. "We did it," she said softly. "And while the road may still be long and difficult, I'm grateful for every moment we've shared together on this journey towards justice. Because no matter how dark the night gets, there is always hope, and with Harper by our side, we can light up even more darkness." Global outline. 1. Three Jocks corner Harper in the school cafeteria. 2. Harper's unwavering commitment to justice gives them strength to push through obstacles. 3. The corrupt officials are brought down one by one, thanks to their tireless investigation. 4. The school system is cleaned up, and lives affected by corruption are finally put right. 5. Harper's journey continues as she faces new challenges where we left off. While the jocks celebrated together, Harper couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose ignite within her. She had been working tirelessly for weeks to uncover evidence linking corrupt officials to various incidents in school that led to the destruction of property and harm to students. As they walked through the packed cafeteria, she noticed Harper's teammates, Jake, Alex, and Jack, eyeing her with admiration and respect. They knew their leader was not just a great athlete, but also someone dedicated to justice and fighting for what was right. Harper couldn't help but feel inspired by their unwavering commitment to unraveling the corruption scheme that had plagued the school system. She felt an overwhelming sense of pride in working alongside them, knowing that they were making a difference in people's lives. But as they delved deeper into the case, Harper faced her own personal demons and challenges along the way. The investigation required close attention to detail, and even with her sharp mind and keen eye for observation, she couldn't shake off doubts about their methods or if they had been exposed before. Despite these setbacks, Harper refused to give up on justice. She knew that every piece of evidence they uncovered was crucial in bringing the corrupt officials to justice. But it also meant putting trust in them and working tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure a smooth transition for everyone involved. As she continued her investigation, Harper encountered various obstacles that tested her resolve. One particularly challenging case required her to infiltrate an elite underground criminal network known as The Game, where members were involved in illegal activities such as drug trafficking, money laundering, and human smuggling. The journey was fraught with danger and deceit, but Harper remained vigilant and determined to protect the students she cared for. She used all of her skills and resources to gather information about the game's operations, including meetings, hidden cameras, and informants within their ranks. Despite these risks, Harper refused to compromise on her commitment to justice. She knew that every small victory was essential in bringing down the corrupt officials responsible for these heinous crimes. But as she delved deeper into this dangerous underworld, she began to realize that there were others involved with the game who had secrets of their own and may be willing to do whatever it takes to protect themselves or their networks. This realization only added a layer of complexity to Harper's investigation, making her more aware of the potential risks she was taking. Every step, she knew that if any member of the game revealed their true intentions or gave away vital information, it would lead to a dangerous chain reaction and could potentially put countless lives at risk. As they continued their journey, Harper faced numerous challenges in maintaining her cover within the criminal network while still gathering crucial evidence against them. They had to navigate through treacherous terrain, evade security forces who were hot on the game's trail, and stay one step ahead of potential threats. Despite these dangers, Harper remained focused on achieving her mission. She knew that without their help, she would not be able to gather enough information or disrupt the operations of the game. They played a crucial role in providing intelligence, helping her understand the group's strengths and weaknesses, and giving her insight into their routines and tactics. As they worked together, Harper began to develop trust with members of the game who were working on different sides of the case. She discovered that there was more than meets the eye when it came to these individuals, each with their own motivations and reasons for being involved in this criminal enterprise. One member, a charismatic hacker named Max, had been secretly monitoring the game's activities for weeks, using his skills to gather information about their operations and expose them to law enforcement agencies. This revelation sparked Harper's interest, as she realized that the individual was not only a valuable asset, but also an enigma. Max revealed that he had discovered evidence of corruption within the game, including ties to other criminal organizations involved in illegal activities such as drug trafficking and money laundering. He shared this information with Harper, who quickly began working alongside him to gather more data and create a solid case against the corrupt officials. With Max's help, Harper was able to uncover new details about the game's operations that shed light on their involvement in these heinous crimes. They discovered that some members of the game were involved in illegal activities that not only threatened student safety, but also had far-reaching consequences for society as a whole. As they worked together, Harper and Max began piecing together the puzzle piece after piece to build a strong case against the corrupt officials. With each lead obtained, their chances of bringing them down increased exponentially. However, just when it seemed like justice was finally within reach, tensions between the game's members started to escalate, leading to a violent confrontation that threatened Harper and her team's safety. In an effort to protect themselves and prevent further harm, they decided to take matters into their own hands. With the help of Max and other informants within the criminal network, they engaged in a high-stakes raid on the game's headquarters, successfully dismantling the organization and bringing its leaders to justice. The operation was a success, but it also left Harper with lasting scars. She had witnessed firsthand the harsh realities of crime and corruption, seeing innocent lives lost at their hands. As she walked out of the game's headquarters that night, tears streaming down her face, she knew that this journey towards justice would never truly be over. For as long as there are corrupt officials in power, there will always be those willing to do whatever it takes to protect themselves or their networks. But with the unwavering commitment of Harper and her teammates, they stood a chance at bringing down these evil forces once and for all. As they walked out of school that day, Harper couldn't help but feel grateful for the journey she had been on so far. She knew that there were many more battles ahead, both personally and professionally, but with each victory, she felt stronger and more determined to continue fighting for justice in her community and beyond. And as she looked back at the events of that day, Harper smiled, knowing that no matter how dark the night may seem or how difficult the road may be, there was always hope, and with Harper by their side, they could light up even more darkness. Int. A school cafe. Night as Harper walks out of the game's headquarters that night, tears streaming down her face. She knew that this journey towards justice would never truly be over. For as long as there are corrupt officials in power, there will always be those willing to do whatever it takes to protect themselves or their networks. But with the unwavering commitment of Harper and her teammates, they stood a chance at bringing down these evil forces once and for all. Harper had been working tirelessly on the case that night, combing through evidence and gathering leads from across the city. The team consisted of 3 popular jocks: Jason, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, Jamie, played by Ryan Gosling, and Kelly, played by Rachel McAdams. Each member brought their unique strengths to the table, with Jason's sharp mind, Jamie's physical prowess, and Kelly's empathetic nature. As they walked out of school that day, Harper couldn't help but feel grateful for the journey she had been on so far. She knew that there were many more battles ahead, both personally and professionally, but with each victory, she felt stronger and more determined to continue fighting for justice in her community and beyond. And as she looked back at the events of that day, Harper smiled, knowing that no matter how dark the night may seem or how difficult the road may be, there was always hope, and with Harper by their side, they could light up even more darkness. As they entered the game's headquarters, Harper knew it would be a nerve-wracking experience. She had heard rumors of its reputation for corruption and surveillance methods, but she also recognized that this was where the real work began. They were greeted by security guards who promptly directed them to their assigned section in the basement, away from any prying eyes. As they settled into their seats, Harper couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with emotion. The scene inside the game's headquarters was unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was an intricate maze of rooms and corridors, filled with high-tech surveillance equipment, cameras, and computers that seemed to be constantly monitoring the activities of everyone in attendance. Jason scanned through a stack of documents on his desk when he heard Harper enter the room. "Harper," he called out in a deep voice, "are you ready for what's ahead?" "I've been preparing for this moment my whole life, Jason," replied Harper, her eyes fixed on him with determination. "Good," Jason said, nodding before turning to Jamie and Kelly. "We need your help in gathering information about the corrupt officials who are involved in the case." Jamie nodded eagerly, his body language indicating that he was eager to assist. "What kind of information do you have in mind?" asked Jason. "I've been tracking their movements for weeks now," replied Harper. She began poring over documents and charts, analyzing every detail she could find about their daily routines and meetings. Jamie and Kelly followed her lead, poring over data on phone calls, emails, and text messages. As they analyzed the information, Harper's team started to piece together a picture of a network of corrupt officials who had been involved in several high-profile cases over the years. They discovered that one of their targets was a former detective named Jimmy, played by Michael Fassbender, who had recently retired from the police force after uncovering an elaborate scheme involving illegal gambling and drug trafficking. Jason quickly approached Jimmy, his voice cold as he took out a notebook and pen. "Jimmy," he said, addressing him directly, "I need you to come clean about your involvement in this case." Jimmy's face fell, looking uncomfortable at the unexpected turn of events. He had always been an upstanding officer, respected by both colleagues and law enforcement agencies for his integrity and dedication. "We're working on a high-profile case," Jason explained, "and I believe that you played a crucial role in uncovering this corruption. You were instrumental in tracking down several key figures involved in the gambling operation. Jimmy's eyes narrowed as he looked back at Harper, suspicion etched into them. I did what was necessary to ensure justice for my fellow officers and protect our community, Jimmy said, his voice raised. You know that we take these cases very seriously, Jason continued. And I understand why you might feel conflicted about your past involvement with the organization. I didn't do anything wrong, Jason, Jimmy insisted. I simply followed orders from higher-ups, who were more concerned with maintaining their power and protecting themselves than with upholding justice. Jason sighed heavily as he looked at Jamie and Kelly, knowing that this was a significant development in the case. They had always believed that Jimmy's departure could have been a major blow to their investigation, but they now realized that it might be possible for him to turn over some valuable information. We need you to gather more evidence, Jason said, his voice firming with determination. We're not going to let Jimmy go without putting an end to the corruption within the game. Jamie nodded eagerly, his mind already racing as he thought about the next steps they needed to take. They knew that this would be a dangerous and nerve-wracking process, but they were determined to bring these corrupt officials to justice no matter what it took. As the team began gathering evidence against Jimmy, Harper's knowledge of the game's operations gave her an advantage in her investigation. She quickly realized that there was a vast network of informants within the organization who provided valuable information and helped with their cover-ups. Jason, Harper, do you have any leads on potential informants? Harper, yes, I've spoken to several individuals who have been close to Jimmy over the years. Some believe that he has connections to a group of drug dealers who operate in our city. Jamie nodded in agreement, his mind already mapping out their next move. They knew they needed to find these informants and bring them to justice before the game could regroup and cover up any evidence. As Harper's team continued their investigation, the tension between Jamie and Jimmy grew stronger by the day. Jamie had always been confident that he was doing everything in his power to uncover the truth, but he knew that Jimmy was also afraid of being exposed for his past involvement with the game. Jimmy, Jason said, approaching him again. You know what I'm thinking? Maybe we should come clean and work together on this case. Jamie looked at Jason skeptically. What do you mean? Jason took a deep breath before speaking. I believe that there may be valuable information about the game's operations if Jimmy were to reveal his involvement with the drug dealers. We could use his expertise in identifying these individuals and gathering evidence against them, while he can help us navigate through the organization's defenses. Jimmy hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. You're right, he said, looking skeptical but also intrigued. Jason smiled as he watched Jamie's determination grow stronger by the day. He knew that this was a significant development in their investigation and that they were getting closer to putting an end to the corruption within the game. As they continued their pursuit of Jimmy, Harper's team faced numerous obstacles along the way. They had to navigate through the game's complex network of informants, often leading them on dangerous missions into restricted areas or dealing with violent threats from loyalists who opposed their efforts. But through it all, Harper remained steadfast in her determination and unwavering commitment to bringing justice to the city. She knew that every victory was a step closer towards putting an end to the game's corruption once and for all. And as they closed in on Jimmy, Jamie stood at his side, his eyes locked onto Harper's determined expression. I know it won't be easy, he said softly, taking her hand in his own. Of course, replied Harper, smiling through the tears that streamed down her face. But we have each other and our team by your side. Together, we can make a difference. As they prepared to confront Jimmy once again, Harper knew that this was just the beginning of their journey towards justice. But with hope in their hearts and determination on their backs, She felt confident that they could overcome any obstacle and bring the game's corruption to an end, no matter how dark it may seem or how difficult the road ahead might be. Fade in int. School Cafe. Day. The bustling school cafeteria is a hive of activity, with students and teachers alike rushing to finish their lunch orders before class begins. The three popular jocks, Jason, J-Man, Jackson, 26, Mike, Jim Boy, Ananya Mancini, 30, and Tony, Big Time, Williams, 28, are sitting at the far end of the cafeteria table, engrossed in a heated discussion. Jason looks up from his food as he spots Harper, a quiet new scholarship student who is struggling to keep up with her friends. She's standing by the counter, looking lost and overwhelmed, trying to navigate the crowd. D-space while avoiding eye contact with anyone else. Jason approaches her hesitantly, concerned that she may be in danger. "Hey there," he says softly, breaking through the silence. "You seem a bit nervous." Harper looks up at him with surprise, then nods weakly as if acknowledging his concern. She's been studying the game for years and knows all too well how dangerous it can be to speak out against its corrupt leadership. "You okay?" Jason continues, taking her hand in his own. "I'm just a little scared," she replies. "I've never faced anything like this before." Jason nods understandingly as he pulls out a small notepad from his pocket and begins jotting down notes on the jock's conversation with Jimmy. He's determined to document everything they say so that Harper can understand their motivations better. "Jimmy," Jason calls out, interrupting her thoughts. Harper looks up at him, eyes narrowing slightly as she recognizes the figure in front of her. "That's his name," she says softly. Jason nods slowly, then turns back towards the jocks and continues with his notes. INT. School Cafe. Day. The cafeteria is filled with the sounds of laughter, chatter, and clinking utensils as students finish their meals before class begins. The three popular jocks are gathered around a table, each holding a cup of coffee or juice. Jason takes a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves while also keeping an eye on Harper, who's sitting across from him. She seems more relaxed than she did earlier in the day, but her eyes still hold an edge. "Jim Boy," Jason begins, turning towards Jamie and speaking softly. "I think we need to talk." Jamie looks up at him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. He knows that Jim's reputation for violence is well known, but he also understands that sometimes the only way to bring down someone like Jimmy is through open dialogue. "Sure thing," Jamie says, nodding eagerly. "What do you want to talk about?" Jason takes out his notepad and begins jotting notes on their conversation with Jimmy. INT. Jason's office. Day. The small office space is filled with Jason's desk, cluttered with papers and books. He sits at the edge of a conference table, surrounded by piles of files and documents. As Harper enters the room, she takes note of her surroundings and looks around for any sign that Jimmy or his team might be present. She spots an empty chair in front of him, which tells Jason that he's likely their next target. Jason glances at her with a determined expression on his face as he places his notepad back down on the table. "I need to talk to you about something," he says slowly. Harper looks up from his desk and takes another deep breath before standing in front of him. She knows that they've been through a lot together, but she's also aware that this conversation could be dangerous if Jimmy or his team finds out what Jason has written down. "What is it?" Jason asks softly. "Jimmy," Harper says hesitantly, looking at her friend and hoping for an explanation. "I think we need to talk about the way he's been acting lately." Jason nods slowly as he takes a step forward in front of his desk, making room for Harper to sit down across from him. "It seems like Jimmy has been more aggressive than usual," Jason says, looking at her with concern. "He's been attacking us, threatening our lives and careers, and even trying to bribe one of your teammates." Harper nods slowly as she takes in the details. She knows that the game is not just about physical violence, but also about manipulating people for their own gain. I understand, Harper says softly, nodding. And I know that it's hard to deal with when someone you care about is being targeted like this. But we have a responsibility to take action. Jason nods slowly as he takes a deep breath and turns back towards his desk, continuing. INT. Jason's office. The room is filled with Jason's files and documents once again, but the atmosphere has changed. There are now signs of panic in the air, and Harper can feel the tension between her friend and Jim. Jason takes a deep breath before turning towards his desk, looking at Harper and speaking softly. I know this might seem risky, he says slowly, but I want you to understand that we have no choice but to take action. Harper nods slowly as she looks around the room, taking note of any potential weaknesses in Jimmy's team or their plans. We need to gather more information about his latest actions and try to uncover what motivates him. Jason continues. Perhaps he believes that our efforts are going against him personally, or maybe he knows something we don't know. Harper nods slowly as she takes a deep breath before standing in front of Jason again. I understand, she says softly, and I agree with you that this is the only way to bring Jimmy down. Jason looks around the room once more and smiles at Harper, grateful for her understanding. He knows that they're both taking steps towards justice, but it's a dangerous game, and there are no guarantees. Let's start by gathering some information, Jason says with determination in his voice. Global outline. 3 popular jocks, Harper, Jimmy, and Jason, corner a quiet new scholarship student, Harper, in the school cafeteria. Harper is known for her unassuming nature, but possesses an unwavering loyalty to her teammates. She's always there when they need her, providing support and encouragement as they navigate their academic journey together. As the group continues their conversation at the cafeteria, Harper takes note of Jimmy's latest actions, noting his tendency towards extreme measures in pursuit of a goal or obsession with power. It seems that he may believe our efforts are going against him personally, potentially due to a grudge or personal vendetta. Meanwhile, Jason is determined to gather more information about Jimmy's motivations and track their progress. He knows that we have no choice but to take action if they're planning something big. The group decides to start by gathering data on Jimmy's daily routine, including his habits at school, interactions with other students, and any significant events or encounters he may be involved in. They also plan to observe him in the cafeteria throughout the day to see how he spends his time and what actions he takes when alone. Harper sets up a meeting for Jason outside of class, where they can discuss their findings without being observed by Jimmy's team. She explains that she wants them to focus on gathering concrete evidence rather than guessing or speculating about his motivations, as it might not be enough to prove anything conclusively. As the group sits in Harper's office, discussing their next steps, Jason admits that he's been struggling with feelings of guilt and uncertainty since Jimmy revealed his involvement in a recent high-profile case. He knows that taking action against him could potentially harm innocent people or put our own lives at risk, but he feels compelled to do something. Harper reassures Jason that we have the legal framework in place to take appropriate measures if necessary. They discuss different options, including seeking an injunction to prevent Jimmy from continuing his harmful behavior and working with law enforcement agencies to investigate any potential crimes or illegal activities he may be involved in. Harper takes a deep breath before speaking again. We need to act fast, she says firmly. The clock is ticking, and we can't afford to wait for things to escalate further. Jason nods understandingly, knowing that the stakes are high. The group decides to take their investigation into action, setting up a surveillance team to monitor Jimmy throughout his daily routine in order to gather evidence of any suspicious activities or behaviors. They also work with local authorities to identify potential leads and coordinate a response if necessary. Asterisk as they continue their research, Harper keeps an eye out for any clues that could help us piece together the motive behind Jimmy's actions. She notices that he tends to avoid his teammates during group meetings and spends most of his time alone, which raises concerns about whether he may be hiding something or trying to distance himself from them. Asterisk meanwhile, Jason continues to analyze his data and look for patterns in Jimmy's behavior. He discovers a few key indicators that point towards a possible connection between the high-profile case and his involvement. His sudden interest in politics, his tendency to speak out against those who hold power, and his secretive nature regarding his personal life. Asterisk as he delves deeper into this information, Jason realizes that Jimmy may have been influenced by political pressure or ambition at work. He knows that taking action could potentially harm innocent people or put our own lives in danger, but it's not worth risking their safety for a single suspect. Asterisk Harper understands the gravity of the situation and decides to take further action. She approaches Jason with an ultimatum. Either we cooperate fully with law enforcement agencies and hand over Jimmy in exchange for his life, or he risks putting himself and others at risk by continuing his harmful behavior unchecked. Asterisk Jason hesitates for a moment, but ultimately agrees with Harper's plan. He knows that it will likely result in significant consequences if Jimmy were to escape our grasp and continue his dangerous activities. So they decide to take the high road and work together towards bringing him down. Asterisk the group meets at an undisclosed location outside of school to discuss their next steps. They gather information about Jimmy's current whereabouts, including any potential hiding spots or alternate locations where he could be planning his next move. Asterisk Harper reveals that she has obtained a warrant for Jimmy's arrest and is coordinating with local law enforcement agencies to search for him. She also shares details of the high-profile case involving the political influence that may have led Jimmy down this path, emphasizing their belief that it was not just an isolated incident, but part of a larger conspiracy. Asterisk Jason nods in agreement as he listens intently, feeling a mixture of fear and determination at the same time. He knows that they're playing a dangerous game with potentially dire consequences, but he also understands the importance of doing what's right for justice and ensuring that Jimmy is held accountable for his actions. Asterisk Harper reassures Jason that our investigation will not be rushed or hasty, taking into account all available information and resources before making any decisions. They agree to prioritize gathering more evidence and following a systematic approach in order to build a solid case against Jimmy. Asterisk as they continue their research and planning, the team faces numerous challenges along the way. Jimmy's team is determined to keep tabs on them, using various tactics such as surveillance cameras, hacking into school systems, or even hiring private investigators. Asterisk Harper must navigate this complex situation carefully, constantly keeping an eye out for any potential threats or attempts at disruption. She knows that if they fail in their mission and Jimmy manages to escape, it could have devastating consequences not only for our investigation, but also for the lives of innocent people caught in his web. Asterisk the team works tirelessly over several weeks, gathering evidence, analyzing data, and interviewing witnesses to build a comprehensive case against Jimmy. They understand that this is a long road ahead, filled with risks, setbacks, and unexpected twists and turns, but they remain steadfast in their pursuit of justice. Asterisk as the investigation progresses, Harper receives new information about Jimmy's connections to high-profile political figures and his involvement in a series of illegal activities. She realizes that he may have been lured by promises of power or financial rewards rather than genuine interest in politics itself. Asterisk the team must confront this possibility head-on, as it could undermine our case against him and potentially compromise their findings if Jimmy were to use these incentives to manipulate his teammates' loyalty and sabotage the investigation altogether. Harper decides to take a bold step. She reaches out to a trusted ally who has connections in high-profile political circles. This person is known for his integrity, honesty, and dedication to upholding justice. So he believes that he can provide valuable insights into Jimmy's motivations and help us uncover any hidden agendas or plans. The team meets with the ally, who shares information about Jimmy's past activities and connections within the political arena. He reveals that there may be a deeper layer of conspiracy behind his involvement in the high-profile case, involving powerful individuals seeking to use his influence for their own gain. Harper realizes that this new evidence could provide crucial clues towards identifying the mastermind behind Jimmy's actions and unraveling the complex web of power structures he's been entangled within. She knows that it'll take a team effort and careful consideration to piece together all the pieces, but she remains determined to succeed in bringing Jimmy down. The investigation continues with renewed vigor as the team works tirelessly to gather more information, interview additional witnesses, and compile a detailed report of their findings. They know that this is a long and challenging road ahead, filled with unexpected twists and turns, but they remain focused on delivering justice for those affected by Jimmy's actions. As months pass, Harper receives new evidence and leads in the search for Jimmy. He becomes increasingly elusive, using various tactics such as code breaking, surveillance, and tracking devices to evade our investigation. It's a risky game with limited resources at his disposal, but they remain committed to finding him no matter what it takes. The team faces numerous setbacks along their journey, including failed attempts by Jimmy's team to disrupt the investigation or sabotage the evidence gathered so far. Harper must navigate this complex situation carefully, constantly staying one step ahead of his adversaries and using all available resources to gather a solid case against him. With each passing day, Harper receives more information about Jimmy's past criminal activities and connections within high-profile political circles. She realizes that he may have been lured by promises of power or financial rewards rather than genuine interest in politics itself, which could compromise our investigation and undermine the trust we've built among his teammates. The team must confront this possibility head-on, as it could reveal a darker side to Jimmy's character and potential motives for continuing his dangerous activities. They reach out to a trusted ally who has connections within high-profile political circles once again, hoping that he can provide valuable insights into Jimmy's motivations and help us uncover any hidden agendas or plans. The team meets with the ally once more, this time in person. He shares information about Jimmy's past criminal activities and his involvement in various illegal organizations, including drug trafficking rings and human trafficking networks. Harper realizes that this new evidence could provide crucial. 3 popular jocks, Jake, Max, and Alex, were all members of the school football team. They were known for their speed, agility, and skill on the field, but also for their off-field antics, causing chaos wherever they went. One day, Harper, a quiet new scholarship student, stumbled upon them in the school cafeteria. Harper had been studying tirelessly to gain admission to a prestigious university with a focus on political science and journalism. She was fascinated by the idea of becoming a journalist one day and using her skills to shed light on important issues that needed attention. As she walked towards them, they noticed Harper's determination and intelligence shining through in every word. "Hey there," Jake said, extending his hand for a handshake. Max chimed in, "You're new here?" Harper nodded, trying not to sound nervous or suspicious about the situation. I'm Harper, she replied. I heard you all are known for your football skills and off-field antics. Jake chuckled. Well, we certainly don't let our personal lives distract us from doing what we love. He gestured towards the other two jocks. Hey there, Max, Alex said, eyeing him with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. What do you guys want to talk about? Max hesitated for a moment before speaking up. Well, I was just wondering if you had any information on Jimmy, our main rival in the football league. Harper's eyes widened as she realized that her new friend might have some valuable insights into Jimmy. Who is Jimmy? Max asked, his voice laced with suspicion. I'm Harper, she replied. I've been following him and his activities for a while now. He was involved in several illegal organizations during my junior year. Jake's eyes narrowed as he listened intently to her words. What kind of illegal organizations were they? Max demanded. Harper hesitated before answering, but eventually nodded. He was part of the drug trafficking ring that operated out of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. She paused for a moment, taking in the gravity of what she had just shared. I've been working with local law enforcement to investigate this case, she continued. We believe Jimmy may have helped organize and execute several high-profile criminal activities over the past few years. Alex's eyes widened as he listened intently to her words. I can't imagine how dangerous that must be, he said, shaking his head. Jake nodded in agreement before turning towards Harper again. What? About him with human trafficking? We've heard of some individuals being forced into labor and subjected to brutal treatment. Harper's eyes narrowed even further as she realized the gravity of her new friend's words. Jimmy was involved in a similar organization, she said, voice shaking slightly. He worked for years without telling anyone what he did for his clients, collecting money from them while they were held captive and subjected to severe physical and emotional abuse. Max and Alex exchanged worried glances as Harper continued her testimony. I've also heard that Jimmy was involved in several other criminal activities over the past few months, she said. He has a long history of breaking into people's homes, stealing their personal items, and using them for illegal purposes. The three jocks' eyes narrowed even further as they listened intently to her words. What kind of crimes did he commit? Max asked finally, his voice becoming increasingly tense. Harper hesitated before answering, but eventually nodded. He was involved in a string of home invasions and burglaries, stealing cars, jewelry, cash, and other valuable items from unsuspecting victims. Alex's eyes narrowed as he listened intently to her words. You know about the house that he broke into last week? Max asked finally, his voice becoming increasingly angry. The one with a large amount of money stolen? Harper nodded in agreement before turning towards Jake. I don't think we've heard much about Jimmy's involvement in that case, she said, her voice shaking slightly. But I'm sure he was involved. Jake's eyes narrowed as he looked at Harper, his expression unreadable. What do you mean by he wasn't? Max asked finally, his tone growing louder. Harper hesitated for a moment before answering, but eventually nodded. I've been working with the local authorities to investigate this case, and found that Jimmy was never arrested or charged in relation to the house he broke into. Alex's eyes narrowed as he listened intently to her words. How can you say that? Max asked finally, his voice rising in anger. Harper hesitated for a moment before answering. I'm not sure, she admitted. We had some leads and evidence that suggested Jimmy was involved, but they were never fully proven or sufficient enough to secure an arrest. Jake's eyes narrowed as he looked at Harper, his expression filled with suspicion. What are your thoughts on this? Max asked finally, his tone becoming even more harsh. Harper hesitated for a moment before answering. I'm not sure what I can say, she admitted again. Jimmy was involved in several criminal activities, and we have plenty of evidence to support our investigation, but it's clear that he didn't do these crimes alone. Max and Alex exchanged worried glances as Harper continued her testimony. I've also been working with law enforcement officials who are investigating Jimmy's connections with other illegal organizations, she said. We believe that some of the individuals we have identified were involved in similar criminal activities, but they don't know about Jimmy or his involvement. Alex's eyes narrowed as he listened intently to her words. You think these people could be connected? Max asked finally, his voice rising in anger. Harper hesitated for a moment before answering. I'm not sure, she admitted again. But we're currently conducting interviews with several individuals who have information about Jimmy's connections and activities. Max and Alex exchanged worried glances as Harper continued her testimony. We've also been looking into his personal life, trying to find any signs of financial instability or vulnerability, she said. We believe that he may be struggling financially due to the criminal activities he was involved in. Alex's eyes narrowed as he listened intently to her words. What about Jimmy's family? Max asked finally, his voice rising in anger. Harper hesitated for a moment before answering. I'm not sure, she admitted again. We've spoken with his parents, and they haven't provided any information or support for their son. Max and Alex exchanged worried glances as Harper continued her testimony. We're also looking into Jimmy's connections with other influential people in the town, trying to find out if he has a hidden agenda or motive, she said. We believe that some of these individuals may have been aware of his criminal activities and could potentially be involved. Alex's eyes narrowed as he listened intently to her words. What about any potential witnesses? Max asked finally, his voice rising in anger. Harper hesitated for a moment before answering. I'm not sure, she admitted again. We've spoken with several people who have information or knowledge of Jimmy's activities, and we're trying to gather more evidence to support our investigation. Alex's eyes narrowed as he listened intently to her words. We need to take this matter seriously, Harper, Max said finally, his voice rising in frustration. Jimmy is a dangerous individual, and we can't afford to let him continue down this path without consequences. Harper nodded in agreement before turning towards Jake again. I don't think it's wise for us to risk our lives chasing after someone like Jimmy, she said, her tone grave. We need to gather more information first, and see if we have any leads that could lead us closer to justice. Jake looked at Harper with a mixture of concern and determination. He knew that the evidence against Jimmy was strong enough to warrant pursuing him legally, but he also understood the risks involved in doing so. I understand your concerns, Jake said, but I think it's worth taking this matter seriously. We can't let someone like Jimmy continue down this path without consequences. Harper nodded in agreement before turning towards Max and Alex once more. We have to do everything we can to gather as much evidence as possible, but also be mindful of the potential risks involved, she said. We need to tread carefully if we want to ensure that justice is served for everyone affected by Jimmy's criminal activities. Max nodded in agreement before turning towards Harper and Jake once more. Let's get started on gathering this information, he said, his voice firm. I believe it's important for us to take the necessary steps to bring Jimmy to justice and prevent him from causing any further harm or damage. Harper nodded in agreement before stepping back into her seat, determined to gather as much evidence as possible to put an end to Jimmy's criminal activities once and for all. /I'm_continue. 180235. T. O. Max. Jimmy. 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 Max. He. Max. Max. Alex. Max. The three athletes were sitting in the school cafeteria, waiting for their next meal. One of them was Harper, a quiet new scholarship student who had recently joined the team. As they sat down at one table, Jake noticed that he looked tense and focused. "You're not following us," said Jake, raising an eyebrow as he reached over to take his seat opposite Harper. "Why are you looking so concerned?" Harper's face turned serious, her eyes narrowing in determination. "I understand your concerns, Jake," she replied, taking a deep breath before turning towards Max and Alex once more. "We have to do everything we can to gather as much evidence as possible, but also be mindful of the potential risks involved." Max nodded in agreement before stepping back into his seat, his eyes fixed on Harper's expression. "Let's get started," he said, a hint of determination creeping through his voice. "I believe it's important for us to take the necessary steps to bring Jimmy to justice and prevent him from causing any further harm or damage." Harper nodded in agreement before stepping back into her seat, determined to gather as much evidence as possible to put an end to Jimmy's criminal activities once and for all. Max looked over at Jake and Max, his eyes narrowing slightly as he considered the risks involved. "I understand your concerns," said Max, a hint of concern crossing his face. "Well, let's not be too hasty," replied Harper, her voice firm. "We need to gather enough evidence before we can take any legal action against Jimmy. We cannot allow him to continue down this path without consequences." Max nodded in agreement before turning towards Harper and Jake once more. "I agree that justice must be served for everyone affected by Jimmy's criminal activities," he said, his voice filled with determination. "Let us start on gathering this information," said Max, his hand gesturing toward the cafeteria table. "We need to take the necessary steps to bring Jimmy to justice and prevent him from causing any further harm or damage." Harper nodded in agreement before stepping back into her seat, her eyes scanning the room for anything that might help them gather evidence. She knew that they had a lot of work ahead of them, but she was determined to do whatever it took to ensure that Jimmy's actions were caught and brought to justice. As Max began his investigation by reviewing footage from school security cameras, Harper noticed a group of students heading towards the cafeteria earlier in the day. They seemed focused on taking pictures or videos, their movements suspicious. She wondered if they might be following Jimmy around, trying to gather more evidence about his criminal activities. Meanwhile, Jake watched as Max and Alex followed up on one of the missing students' family members. He had heard that he was last seen walking towards a nearby park before disappearing without a trace. The family were desperate for answers, but so far, no leads seemed promising. As they continued their investigation, Harper noticed several suspicious characters lurking around campus, watching and waiting for an opportunity to strike. She wondered if Jimmy's criminal activities had somehow slipped through the cracks in security measures, or if he was using some kind of secret network to evade capture. Max and Alex soon discovered that a group of local hoodlums were involved in Jimmy's criminal operations. They claimed to be part of a loose-knit community with members who believed in justice for all, but it became clear from their actions and conversations that they had been using these people as coveralls for Jimmy's illegal activities. Max knew he needed to take action before the hoodlums could strike again. He called the police and informed them about his findings, warning them of the potential danger involved in investigating such a large-scale criminal organization led by Jimmy. The police quickly arrived on the scene, and Max explained everything that they had discovered so far. They gathered evidence from school security cameras, as well as witness accounts, to establish a solid case against Jimmy's criminal activities. Max worked closely with the local law enforcement agencies to build a strong case against Jimmy and his accomplices. He carefully analyzed surveillance footage and interviewed witnesses who could provide valuable information about their crimes. As they continued their investigation, Harper saw firsthand how far some individuals would go to cover up their tracks in order to protect themselves or others involved in criminal activities. She knew that it was not an easy task, but she was determined to bring Jimmy's actions to justice and ensure that he faced the consequences of his actions. Max and Alex worked tirelessly behind the scenes, gathering evidence against Jimmy and his accomplices while keeping a close eye on the hoodlums' movements. They also worked with local community members and organizations to raise awareness about their mission and help protect themselves from potential threats. The investigation took months, but eventually, Max's hard global outline. Three popular jocks, Max and Alex. Corner Harper in the school cafeteria, a quiet new scholarship student. They had been following Jimmy, a charismatic and cunning criminal, for weeks through various means. His meticulous planning and attention to detail made him nearly impossible to catch. Despite their efforts, however, they were unable to pin down his exact whereabouts or actions. As the scene unfolds, Max explains that Jimmy's criminal activities involved drug trafficking, money laundering, and multiple violent crimes committed against innocent people who had crossed his path. He mentions a particularly gruesome attack on a local community member, which left several witnesses traumatized. The police were skeptical about their involvement in such an act, but found enough evidence to take Jimmy into custody for questioning. Max continues by sharing the details of Jimmy's criminal activities, including drug deals with high-profile clients and his connections to corrupt officials in the city's underworld. He also mentions that Jimmy had a personal vendetta against Harper, whom he perceived as a threat to his power and reputation. As they investigate, Max and Alex discover that Jimmy has an alibi for several of the events leading up to the attack on the community member. They piece together a timeline of when each crime was committed, including how it fit into Jimmy's overall plan. They uncover evidence linking Harper with one of Jimmy's associates who had provided false information about her involvement in a previous investigation. This connection leads them to an abandoned warehouse where they find a stash of cash and other valuable items that suggest Jim's criminal empire is far more extensive than initially thought. Max and Alex realize that if they cannot catch Jimmy, he will continue his dangerous activities with impunity, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. They decide to team up once again to gather the necessary evidence against him before it's too late. The investigation takes them deeper into Jimmy's criminal world, involving multiple levels of planning and execution. Max infiltrates one of Jimmy's inner circles, working closely with members who have first-hand knowledge about his operations. He learns that Jimmy uses sophisticated hacking techniques to bypass security systems, making him nearly impossible to track down using traditional methods. The team discovers a hidden network of servers storing encrypted messages and video recordings, which provide crucial clues about Jimmy's criminal activities and the people he trusts most. They also find evidence linking Harper with one of Jimmy's key rivals in the underworld, who had threatened her life if she pursued Jimmy's case. This connection leads them to an underground meeting where they confront both individuals and expose their involvement in a joint operation to take down Jimmy. As tensions rise within the team, Max begins to question his own loyalty and motives for working with Harper against Jimmy. He realizes that he is more motivated by justice than personal vendetta or fear of retribution, but this realization comes at a cost. With no clear evidence linking him to any wrongdoing, Max becomes increasingly vulnerable as the pressure mounts on him to bring Jimmy down. The team must navigate through dangerous territory and protect themselves from potential threats while keeping their own secrets hidden. They come face to face with one of Jimmy's closest associates who reveals that he is aware of Harper's involvement in their investigation, but has been hesitant to reveal it due to fear for his own safety. This revelation forces the team to make a difficult decision: continue gathering evidence against Jimmy, and risk putting themselves and others at unnecessary risks, or back off from pursuing him completely. The tension reaches its boiling point as Max and Harper race against time to gather more information about Jimmy's criminal activities before he strikes again. They uncover a shocking conspiracy involving a powerful organization that is willing to do whatever it takes to protect their interests, including murder and destruction. This revelation challenges the team's trust in each other and forces them to question their own motives for working together. As they navigate this dangerous world of crime and intrigue, they must decide which side they will support and how far they are willing to go to bring Jimmy down. In a dramatic finale, Max confronts Jimmy himself at one of the warehouse where he was previously held by his associates. The confrontation is intense, with both parties armed and prepared for battle. As they engage in a fierce exchange of words, Max reveals all that they have discovered about Jimmy's criminal activities, including evidence linking him to multiple violent attacks on innocent people who had crossed his path. He also exposes the true nature of their partnership, revealing that Harper has been working with them from the beginning to build this dangerous empire. With a heavy heart and determination in tow, Max delivers his ultimatum. Either Jimmy is brought down, or he will do everything in his power to bring him down himself. This final confrontation leaves Jimmy hanging on the edge of a precipice, with only one option left for them all: the ultimate sacrifice that could save countless lives. In the aftermath of their daring rescue mission, Harper and Max return home, shaken but victorious by what they had accomplished. They have uncovered an entire criminal empire run by one of the city's most dangerous figures, and together, they vow to use this knowledge to fight against crime and protect the safety of their community. As they reflect on the events that transpired over the course of their investigation, Harper realizes that justice is not just about bringing guilty people to justice, but also about preventing others from falling prey to IT's corrupt system. She vows to continue working towards a better future for themselves and the greater good in the face of danger and adversity. The story ends with Harper walking away from the school cafeteria, her determination shining through as she looks out over the bustling city streets, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead and protect those who depend on her. Global outline. Harper, a quiet new scholarship student at the elite school, enters the crowded cafeteria and sees three popular jocks, Max, Tyler, and Jake, standing together. The trio is chatting animatedly about their latest exploits, discussing the dangerous world they are trying to make a difference in. They notice that Harper has been absent for several days since she had an unexpected out-of-town trip with her family. Harper's unexplained absence led them to wonder if something was up, and they decide to investigate further. The trio approaches Harper, sensing their curiosity and asking about the situation. Harper explains that she had been working on a research project related to a recent crime wave in the city, which involved analyzing data from security cameras and tracking patterns of criminal activity. While conducting her investigation, she discovered an entire criminal empire run by one of the most dangerous figures in the city. The group becomes increasingly intrigued as Harper shares more details about the organization, revealing that it was a multi-state network led by a ruthless gang known for its brutal tactics and manipulation of law enforcement officials. They also discovered evidence linking some high-profile individuals to the criminal empire, including a local politician who had been secretly funding their operations. The group realizes that Harper's research could have serious implications for both them and her community if they were not able to stop this gang before it caused any harm. They decide to take action and form an alliance with Harper, recognizing the importance of working together towards common goals. Asterisk as they begin their investigation, Harper partners up with Tyler, a tech-savvy surveillance expert who specializes in analyzing security footage from city streets. Together, they analyze the patterns of criminal activity and identify key locations where the gang operates. Asterisk they also work with Jake, a skilled martial artist who has experience dealing with dangerous criminals, to develop tactics for their own survival while pursuing the organization's activities. Harper becomes increasingly confident that they have a chance at stopping this group before it can strike again. Asterisk the trio navigates through treacherous terrain and faces numerous obstacles along the way, including surveillance drones, corrupt police officers, and rival criminal organizations determined to stop them at any cost. They must rely on their quick thinking, strategic planning, and unwavering determination to stay one step ahead of the dangerous gang. Asterisk as they delve deeper into the organization's operations, Harper discovers that it is not just a standalone crime empire, but rather an interconnected network with other criminal organizations across multiple states, including Russia, Mexico, and even South Africa. The group must navigate through international politics, law enforcement agencies, and corrupt officials to expose their activities and bring down the entire criminal underworld. Asterisk along the way, Harper encounters several powerful individuals within the organization who are willing to go to great lengths to protect themselves and maintain their power. They include a ruthless crime boss known as the General and his inner circle of trusted lieutenants and associates. Asterisk as they gather more information about the General's plans for world domination, Harper realizes that her research could be the key to bringing down this dangerous organization and stopping its nefarious activities from spreading across borders. She decides to use all available resources to gather evidence against them, including confidential intelligence documents, surveillance footage, and testimonies from victims. Asterisk with the help of Jake's martial arts skills, Harper and Tyler launch a daring raid on the General's hideout in an abandoned warehouse located deep within the city's outskirts. They engage in intense combat with the General's gang members, using their combined expertise to take them down one by one. Asterisk in a thrilling showdown, Harper engages in a fierce battle against the General himself, showcasing her exceptional martial arts skills and strategic thinking. With each blow, she gains an advantage over the powerful leader and begins to close in on him. Asterisk as they confront the General's remaining members, Harper discovers that he has been working with other criminal organizations across multiple countries, including China and South Africa. They must find a way to infiltrate his network and gather evidence against their activities before it is too late. Asterisk in the final showdown, Harper engages in an epic battle with the General and his inner circle of lieutenants, using her martial arts skills, intelligence gathering, and strategic planning to emerge victorious. She emerges from the warehouse with a full arsenal of weapons at hand and successfully infiltrates their network. Asterisk as they work towards dismantling the General's criminal empire, Harper realizes that justice is not just about bringing guilty people to justice, but also about preventing others from falling prey to its corrupt system. She vows to continue working towards a better future for herself and the greater good in the face of danger and adversity, using her knowledge and expertise to make a difference in the world. Asterisk the story ends with Harper walking away from the school cafeteria, her determination shining through as she looks out over the bustling city streets, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead and protect those who depend on her. She knows that there are many more dangerous criminals operating across the globe, but with their help, she believes they can be brought down one by one, ensuring a safer future for all. Asterisk Harper's journey is not just about stopping a single criminal empire, but rather an ongoing quest to dismantle corruption and bring justice to those who have been affected by it. She continues to work towards this goal, using her unique skills and expertise to make a difference in the world and protect the safety of her community. Harper stood at the entrance of her favorite cafe, staring out over the bustling city streets. The sun was shining bright on the concrete squares and billboards that lined the sidewalks, casting a golden glow upon everything below her feet. She had come here for one reason: to catch up with two close friends who were also working towards making a difference in their own ways. As she approached them, Harper noticed that they looked tired but determined. They both shared an unwavering commitment to justice and preventing others from falling prey to the corrupt system that plagued society. They had started by joining various volunteer groups and community organizations focused on promoting education, healthcare, and social welfare initiatives in their local communities. Harper knew that her journey was far from over, but she felt a sense of pride knowing that they were making an impact wherever they went. She looked out at them, feeling grateful for the support and encouragement they had given her along the way. They shared stories about their personal experiences with corruption, which had led them to become passionate advocates for change. As they continued their conversations, Harper couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency in their mission. The world was facing numerous challenges, from climate change to political instability, and it seemed like there were more criminals operating across the globe than ever before. She knew that with each successful stoppage or intervention by her friends, she was making a small contribution towards creating a safer future for all. However, Harper also recognized that they couldn't do everything on their own. They needed help from others who shared their vision and had the skills to take down corrupt systems at various levels.